I sat silently in my tent, listening to the sounds of snapping bones and guttural growls. When the sun rose and I peered out, all that was left were blood-soaked footprints leading right to my truck. Hi, I'm Blair Bathory, and this is the Something Scary podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Whether this is your first time, or you're one of the brave souls who join us every week. And I hope you enjoyed that 2-sentence horror story at the opening of this podcast. If you have one you'd like to share with us, drop it into the comments or send me an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. We might even add it to next week's podcast. Sometimes, the ground beneath you isn't as solid as it seems. It shifts, breathes, and remembers. The forest doesn't just grow. It watches, whispers, and waits for you. Every step you take awakens something that should have stayed buried. There are places where the earth hungers, where the trees are hungry for more than just your fear. And once you've crossed the line, there's no going back. So, my spooky listeners, happy Earth Day, or should I say, beware. First, marked by midnight, followed by It Breathes Beneath You. Finally, my last story, Some Eyes Don't Blink. So, wanna hear something scary? Buried screams. It's not what you hear in the woods that should scare you. It's who hears you, like in this story inspired by Marcus. When we were in 4th grade, we went on a class trip to Islandwood, an environmental learning center tucked into the mossy woods of Bainbridge Island. For most kids, it was a 3-day adventure of s'mores and hikes and learning about salmon. For me, it was the last time I felt safe in the woods. There were 4 of us, me, Matt, Harrison, and Jackson. Room 203, top floor, the boys' dorm. It was our first time sleeping away from home without our parents. We were jittery, fueled by Sour Patch Kids and ghost stories. On the first night, just as we were drifting off, the doorknob jiggled, not once, but twice. A sharp metallic click-click, like someone trying to get in. But the door was locked from the inside, and there was no one in the hallway when we looked. We blamed it on the wind, or maybe one of the counselors checking in. But I saw the look on Harrison's face. He'd heard it too. And it didn't sound like the wind. The second night was worse. We just finished our nightly routine brushing our teeth in the giant shared bathroom, sprinting barefoot down the hall like idiots, when Jackson dared us to sneak into the woods behind the lodge. Just for a minute. We'll be back before anyone notices, he said. So we slipped out with our flashlights through a side door near the mudroom. The forest swallowed us whole. The trails were slick, the trees gnarled like they'd grown angry, twisted by time. About 10 minutes in, we found a clearing. The moonlight fell in slivers, painting everything a bluish gray. That's when Matt saw it. "What is that?" he whispered. In the center of the clearing was a strange stone structure. It looked like a cairn, rocks stacked like a crude tower, but not like anything I'd seen before. There were sticks tied with twine, bone-colored things arranged in a circle. A rusted bell hung from a branch above it, motionless. Jackson reached out and rang the bell. I still hear that sound sometimes. Not a ding, not even a chime, more like a sharp whine, like metal screaming. It echoed through the forest, then everything went quiet. Not late night in the woods quiet, but the kind that makes your chest hurt. No bugs, no wind, just stillness. "We should go," I said. And we did. We ran. Back in room 203, we tried to pretend everything was normal. We didn't tell anyone, but we couldn't stop listening to every creak, every scrape. That night, just after midnight, something fell in the janitor's closet. The door was locked like always. A heavy padlock hung from the outside. But we all heard it. A shift, a thud, then silence. We sat up in our beds, not saying a word. At some point, we must have fallen asleep, from sheer exhaustion. I woke up at 5 a.m. to scratching, slow and deliberate, from inside the closet, and something else, humming, a reedy off-key melody, like someone singing a lullaby through clenched teeth. I shook Harrison. As soon as he opened his eyes, the sounds stopped. We sat there in the dark, too scared to breathe. I cracked the window for air. The fog rolled in, thick and cold. That's when the door opened. It was Timmy, one of the boys from room 210. He wandered in, complaining about how early he'd woken up. We didn't even care how or why he came in. We were just glad to see someone else. "What's with you guys?" he asked, eyeing our pale faces. I told him about the closet, about the sounds, about the thing we saw in the woods. He laughed until we mentioned the bell. That's when he got quiet. "My brother told me something once," Timmy said, "about a thing called the Whistler. It lives in the Olympic Mountain. He said if you hear anything whistling in the woods, you're already marked. It doesn't kill you right away. It waits, follows, gets into places it shouldn't. Like your closet." "Stop messing with us," Matt muttered, but his voice cracked. "No, listen," Timmy continued. "It rings a bell so you hear it. Once. And then it comes for you that night. You'll hear it whistle before it takes you. But if it stops, that's worse." We all stared at him, not breathing. Just then, an ear-piercing shriek came through the window. Not an animal, not a human either. A sound that split the fog. We all froze. Then, scratch, scratch, from the closet. We didn't wait. We bolted. But as we reached for the doorknob, it jiggled. From the outside, no one was in the hall. We spent the rest of the night huddled together, backs to the wall, lights on. We didn't talk, didn't blink. The next day, our teacher told us it was time to pack up. We didn't argue. We barely spoke. Room 203 had turned quiet and strange, like the air itself didn't want to be there anymore. On the bus ride back, I watched the forest blur past in streaks of green and shadow. Just as we turned the bend out of the island wood, I caught something in the trees. A figure, just beyond the tree line, tall, thin, perfectly still, like it had been waiting. I blinked, and it was gone. None of us ever talked about it again. Matt moved away the next year. Harrison stopped answering my texts by middle school. Jackson switched schools and wouldn't meet my eyes when I pressed him at the grocery store years later. But sometimes, in the deepest part of the night, I wake to a sound, a soft whistle, slow and off-key, not outside, inside, in my closet. At first, I thought it was my imagination. Then I heard the scratching, the quiet tap, tap, tap of fingernails on wood. And last week, I found dirt on the floorboards, pine needles, like something had been coming and going. I don't sleep much anymore because the Whistler waits, not in the woods, not in the mountains. It waits in the places that we feel safest. And once it finds a way in, it never leaves. Not until you do. What would you do if you heard a whistle in the dark? Could it have followed you home? Do you think it was in their closet? Tell us your thoughts in the comments or send us an email to somethingscary@snarled.com. The forest doesn't need to chase you. It just waits. Like in this story inspired by Japan's dancing trees and written by Sarah. They found her phone first, face down in the moss, still miraculously intact. No blood, no broken branches, just a phone resting there, like it had been sweetly tucked in, a faint imprint in the undergrowth where she must have fallen or knelt. The battery had long died, but not before streaming almost 24 hours of footage. Most of it was routine, shaky shots of tangled roots, breathless commentary on insane moss density, and that wide-eyed, over-caffeinated YouTube energy. Let's get primal today, fam! Happy Earth Day, respect the land, leave no trace, right? Aokigahara got nothing on this island, I swear. The trees literally move. That clip made the rounds. Reddit picked it apart frame by frame, but the last video, posted just past midnight, was the one that stuck. No tags, no music, just a title. The forest is breathing. It knows I don't belong here. And then, in the glow of her headlamp, the sound of leaves shifting, the lungs drawing in a slow, shallow breath. After that, only silence. They said her name was Alex, backpacker, solo trekker, obsessed with remote trails and off-grid vibes. Yakushima Island was her Earth Day pilgrimage. Untouched cedars, century-old roots, UNESCO-level peace. She wasn't the first hiker to disappear, but she was the first to vanish on April 22nd in a forest locals whispered only lets you leave if it chooses you. They say it happens once a year. One soul reclaimed, the forest waits patiently, and then it breathes. Alex had started her hike from Shiratani, following a marked path, at least at first. The early videos showed sunlight slanting through mossy branches, streams babbling over rocks like something out of a Ghibli film. But somewhere around hour 6, the trail changed. Not dramatically, just subtly wrong. Markers vanish, trees bent at odd angles, as though leaning in to whisper. A few had growths, bulbous knots or hollows, that looked too much like eyes, like mouths caught mid-word. Alex laughed it off, calling it anime-level weird. Then her compass started spinning. "That's not real," she said on camera. Nervous, she held the dial too long, like she was waiting for it to settle, but it didn't. Then she stumbled slightly, like gravity had shifted sideways for a second. Her breath fogged, just once, despite the heat. The forest stayed still. She checked her phone GPS, but the signal had died. Still, she kept going. The kind of arrogance you need to livestream a survival hike alone. But the forest isn't a fan of confidence. By twilight, the videos took on a different tone, less commentary, more silence. The only audio, branches creaking in windless air, the slosh of her boots, and once faintly a voice, not hers. "Did you hear that?" she asked the camera. No one did. She laughed weakly. "Probably just an echo, or a bird, right?" The forest didn't answer. The lens shifted toward the trees. Gnarled trunks stood like frozen dancers mid-step. One root twisted midair, curling as if it had been in motion. She paused, then muttered, "I swear that tree was facing the other way earlier." No one responded. The forest isn't big on conversation. She started talking less about it. Her breathing grew louder in the recordings, shallow, uncertain. She hummed under her breath, tuneless and shaky. One video showed her passing the same oddly bent cedar 3 times, from 3 different angles. The timestamps were minutes apart. Locals called it Kotai Mori, the forest of shifting bodies. They say its roots stretch deeper than bone, that its soils remember everything buried in it. That on Earth Day, the forest wakes, no longer a place but a being. And like any living thing, it needs to feed. Not on blood, not exactly, but on guilt. At 11:52 p.m., Alex made one last video. The camera had slipped to her chest. All we see is a slow, side-to-side sway as she walks, like the forest is rocking her, cradling her. Her voice is barely a whisper now.
"It's not the trees, it's watching. I think I stepped where I shouldn't.
I picked up a branch, deadwood, and thought it was cool. I put it in my pack." Silence. Then, "I think that was a mistake." There's movement up ahead, leaves shifting without wind, branches twisting mid-frame, not fast, just wrong. Then clearly, a groan, like wood flexing under weight, except no one is stepping on it. The lens tilts. The trees are circling now, like a spiral, a quiet, subtle dance that only makes sense if you stop blinking. She turns the camera slowly toward the trees, where something had been. Not a figure, just the echo of where one might have stood. Something rustles close. Too close. Her breath hitches. The trees don't move, but the shadows between them seem to deepen. Then, just before the footage cuts, there's the faintest impression of a handprint forming in the moss beside her foot, pressing down. The forest is breathing, she says, voice cracking. It knows I don't belong here, and then the footage ends. Search teams combed the area, found the pack. The stick was gone. No tracks, no struggle. Just the phone, perfectly placed, like someone had set it down or handed it off. People still hike there. Some try to recreate Alex's routine. Urban legends always attract the curious. But they say GPS fails in strange, specific ways. That the trees bend to form new paths behind you. And that if you listen, really listen, you can hear a low hum pulsing underfoot. A breath. Once a year, the earth takes someone back. It's never the worst people. Not killers or oil executives. Just someone who thought the rules didn't apply to them. Someone who thought, leave no trace. Didn't include that pre-branch or that moss-covered rock. When the forest decides, it shifts, slowly, patiently, until every trail leads deeper in. They never found Alex, but a new video surfaced recently. It was posted from her old account, years after it had been deactivated. No description, no tags, just a black screen, and the sound of leaves exhaling. The timestamp read April 22nd, but the year was next year. What if nature isn't just alive, but aware? Would you know if the ground beneath you was watching you? And if you love horror like we do, join us at patreon.com/snarl to get even more spooky fun. Sometimes when you disturb the darkness follows you home, like in this Guyanese urban legend inspired by Amarita. The younger hunter crouched silently in a makeshift platform he had constructed in a tree, several feet above the forest floor. It was a deep night in the jungle surrounding Santa Mission, Guyana, and the blackness around him was almost complete. So dense it felt like the trees were swallowing light. But it had been a good night. He had already killed 2 labas and was optimistic that he could bag one more before the night was over. Only 22 years old, Joseph Brown was already a seasoned hunter. Born and raised in the village of Santa Mission, Joseph had grown up reading the forest like a second language, and now he was even being paid by a legal firm in Georgetown to hunt wild meat for their clients. It was around 8 o'clock, the hour when the forest begins to feel a little less alive. Joseph knew from experience this was the time the labas liked to roam. The jungle was quieter now, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. He adjusted his grip on the shotgun and was preparing to climb down from the platform to retrieve the second labas. But then, a sound. Somewhere below him, behind the tree, sharp, subtle, a footstep. A branch giving under weight. He paused, listened. The air had shifted. He spent hundreds of nights alone in the bush, and he knew its language intimately. This sound wasn't normal. It wasn't the skittering of a rodent or the stalk of a predator. It was deliberate. Something moving with purpose, and it was getting closer. Joseph kept his 12-gauge shotgun at the ready and slowly switched on the torchlight. The beam pierced through the thick blackness, slicing into the underbrush where the sound had come from. Then his light caught eyes. 2 twin pinpoints of eerie, glowy reflection, just hovering in the dark. He expected the eyes to be low to the ground, maybe a nocturnal animal caught mid-creep. But no, they were too high, chest height, then higher. The beam slowly climbed until it revealed the full outline of a man, or what looked like a man. Tall, about 6 feet, and completely still, just standing there, staring directly at him. Joseph's chest tightened. The figure didn't make a sound, didn't flinch, didn't blink. Trying to be rational, Joseph flashed his torch 3 times, a signal to say, "I see you. Identify yourself." In the jungle, it was a simple, common gesture. If the figure was a person, another hunter, a local, they'd respond, say something. But the strange man remained silent, not a breath, not a word. Then Joseph noticed something even stranger. The eyes. They weren't reflecting light. They were glowing. Like a cat's or something deeper in the food chain. No human's eyes did that, not like this. A cold shiver ran through Joseph's veins. The hair on his arms stood on end. His instincts screamed. This wasn't a man. He raised the shotgun and fired. The jungle erupted with the blast. A deafening boom tore through the silence, briefly illuminating the trees in stark, unnatural light. Then silence again. But not a normal silence. It felt wrong, hollow, pressurized. There was no scream, no impact, no sound of a body hitting the floor. The echo of the gunshot was swallowed instantly by the thick, human air, as if the jungle itself didn't want the noise. Joseph didn't wait. Clutching his shotgun, he climbed down from the tree and ran, sprinting through the bush, dodging branches, tearing through the brush, his breath ragged. The 2 miles to his home blurred into one endless corridor of shadows and rustling leaves. He left the Labas behind, left everything behind. When he reached his home, panting and drenched in sweat, he told his wife what had happened. She listened quietly, then said something that chilled him even more than the silence in the jungle. "You shouldn't have shot it. You shouldn't even have seen it." The next morning, he returned to the spot with about 10 other men from the village. The Labas were still there, but that wasn't all. They found blood. Thick splotches trailing through the underbrush and a jagged path like something wounded had tried to flee but wasn't running straight. The trail led all the way to Kamani Creek, miles away. But there was no body, no evidence of where the thing had gone. Joseph later told the attorney who had hired him to hunt. The man paled and gave him an unsettling warning. "You must stop hunting. I had a bad dream about you." That might have been the end of it, just another strange story from the bush. But about 6 months later, Joseph was in a different area of the jungle, near Kamani Creek again, with several other villagers, and that's when they saw it. A skeleton. Human, or at least mostly. The bones were weathered, half buried, and too clean, picked over by insects and scavengers. But what disturbed them most? There was no skull. Joseph crouched down and stared at the remains. "We wanted to find the head," he later said. "The head would have told us what it was, but there was none." They waited for any word of a missing person, a report, a name, but nothing came. The villagers began to whisper. Some said the thing Joseph had shot wasn't a man at all, but a Mas-u-Kuraman, a creature from folklore, said to haunt the waterways, hairy, human-shaped, sometimes helpful, sometimes hostile. Said to lure people from boats, said to watch from the edges of the trees. And then the village dogs started to disappear. Chickens vanished, livestock too. There were sightings, a tall figure, always just on the edge of torchlight, gone the moment anyone approached. Joseph, now 71 years old, still remembers that night with painful clarity. He says he was being buckshot, powerful enough to drop a wild cow in his tracks. No human, he insists, could have taken a direct hit and fled for miles, not without screaming, not without falling. And yet, it ran and vanished. Although he's still a hunter, Joseph admits he's never gone out at night in quite the same way. He's killed jaguars, faced snakes longer than a man is tall, but nothing has ever frightened him like he saw at Santa Mission. he hopes he never sees it again. Do you think the jungle has secrets it wants to keep hidden from us? Or do we bring the darkness with us when we step inside? Could you ever truly escape the things you've disturbed? Or do they follow, waiting for the right moment to return? This week's podcast stories were edited by Sarah Lukasiewicz, narration by Blair Bathory, audio edited and mixed by Fitz Harris, additional audio editing by Calvin Linderman, produced by Anna Villalobos, executive produced by Gail Gilman, music by Sapphire Sindalo and Calvin Linderman. If you have a story you'd like to submit, send me an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. Don't forget to watch the video version of Something Scary over at youtube.com/snarled. And if you'd like to support the show and everything we do at Snarled, join our Patreon at patreon.com/snarled. Well, witches, I hope you enjoyed this week's stories. And let me know in the comments if you liked our new 2-sentence horror story at the beginning. And like I said earlier, if you have one you'd like to share, leave me a comment or send us an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. And I'll see you next week. Sweet screams.